Welcome back, players and collectors, to my channel, Ren's Collectibles. And today we're going to discuss everything that everybody's been talking about, and that is kind of what happened in Melbourne DLC for all my Lorcana players out there. And I feel like it's been a very heavy topic. It's been something that a lot of people have already discussed, but there's a lot going around and a lot going on, and honestly, it's worth breaking down even one more time for those who may not know. So DLC Melbourne is honestly gonna live infamously at this point. I just don't see how Ravensburger is gonna be able to clean up the narrative even enough to make it seem like it was a good event. Although in retrospect, it is a good event still. Like, the DLC itself was a fun event that people, I mean, I didn't go, but you know, reading all the reports of people who did go, you know, lots of people had fun, but it's just being drowned out by all of the cheating scandals. And, you know, there's definitely a large group of people out there saying, like, it's not confirmed, that we haven't heard from judges or Lorcana, so this, you know, nothing is considered cheating until it's confirmed. Well, nothing is going to ever be confirmed, is my first thing on that, right? You know, I'm not here to bash anybody or like come out and say like we need to gang up and attack people. Nothing like that, right? That is definitely not okay. But you know, you gotta call out cheating when it happens, and when somebody is acting as a cheater, they should be called out for it, right? So I've got some notes here. You know, making some notes. Of course, I'm recording in my truck, so I don't have my usual studio setup here going on. So I'm gonna read some of these that was going on, and most of you already know. But this was a top 8 match in DLC in Australia, Melbourne, and there was a sequence of play that was heavily discussed, and honestly, I call it cheating. I do call it cheating, and I'll explain why in a minute. But basically, there was a ruling that went against what the actual rules state. And it definitely was a very sour, bitter note for the tournament here. And before I move on any further, I just want to say all of these major games, so, you know, Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, they all have stuff like this happening too. The only thing I could say is kind of different is usually you kind of see some action coming of it. So that's kind of what I'm hoping is going to happen here with Ravensburger. I don't know that it will, but I'm just saying I'm hoping that it does. So it was a few turns into the game, and Jesse, who was the Emerald Amethyst player, it was his turn. He had a magic broom on the field, and then he exerted it to quest for lore. So he gained a lore on that. Then he played his ink. I forget which card it was. It's not really relevant to the situation, but he played a card for ink, and then he played Merlin Goat for 4 ink. And then from that, there's a couple triggers that happen. And according to the rules, it's every card trigger goes into what people are calling the bag, but it's basically a queue, and there's no real priority to this queue. You know, what's in the bag is in the bag. You get to pick it out and play it kind of how you deem necessary. So there's no real like order of how triggers resolve in a sense. There are some triggers that matter first, but in this case these did not, because what Merlin Goat does is once you play it, you gain 1 lore, and then you can banish another card. So what Jesse did was played his goat and went to go write down on his piece of paper that he gained 1 lore, right? Just pretty simple action there. His opponent, who's Clement, what was he playing? Ruby Sapphire. He wrote down the lore gain as well. As soon as he was done with the lore gain, he announced he was going to be banishing Magic Broom to draw a card. And immediately as he was saying that, reaching for the card, you can see Clement on the video reaching over, pointing, saying like, you can't do that, you already missed the trigger action, which is false. He didn't miss the trigger action. like I said, everything is in the bag. You can still do it. The trigger action point has not passed. The only thing, as some people have stated before, but a lot of people miss this point, the only way that I can conceivably think that he would miss the trigger at that point is if he had passed the turn, which there's been multiple people saying, you know, he never did pass the turn. He was still playing, clearly, so he could not have passed the turn. All right. And as soon as he did that, Clement brought the judge over and questioned the ruling, right? And the judge, which is a whole nother argument, we'll talk about that in a second too. That was a major problem as well. The judge ruled in favor of not banishing the broom and not drawing, which ultimately left Jesse at a disadvantage because Clement had the shark in play, the Maui shark, and you know that allowed him to really get the upper hand. And I'm not going to sit here and say had this gone the correct way, Jesse would have won. I'm not going to say that at all because that's not true. That's not true. It could have gone either way. Maybe he does win. Maybe he doesn't win. It doesn't matter. The fact that you had a top 8 match on live stream, on the stream, and this happened and then it was just allowed to happen it was mind-blowing. I couldn't believe watching it too. You know, I was actually watching, I think it was the Forbidden Mountains live stream of it, and they were super confused by it as well. So basically the ruling is really bad because the rules state that you can kind of play these triggers no matter what. In real time, it was only a matter of like 4 or 5 seconds from the time Jesse played the goat, wrote down the lore, and then went to go trigger the second action, which was to take care of the broom and draw a card. So realistically, there was no conceivable way that he missed that trigger point, right? And there's a lot of I think this in and of itself is just a very controversial thing. I don't think it would have blown up to this proportion had it been just some two random people, right? The fact that it was with Clement, though, is a huge topic of discussion because he has been accused of cheating in pretty much every major event. Actually, I was scouring the social media pages, the Discord, Reddit, all that stuff, and trying to gather some stuff. It's all hearsay, so I'm not going to really like go through all of it because we don't know if it's true or not. This one I can conceivably say is true because we literally watched it with our eyes unfold. And the problem here first is with Clement. And like I said, I'm not here to like bash people. I'm not calling for anybody to take action against them or anything like this. I'm going to call it out what it is. At a very minimum, and this is a huge stretch, but at a very small minimum, that is very unsportsmanlike to manipulate a judge and your opponent that way when you clearly know that is not how the ruling works. That is at a minimum unsportsmanlike conduct. And he should have just been handed a loss for that. I mean, just bare minimum. What I think the maximum and what I think is more realistic because of what had actually transpired and knowing that Clement knows these rules. Like he's not a new player. He's not an inexperienced player. He knows these rules. He's been accused of this stuff before and now we just saw it unfold. So it's like, there's some precedent here. There's some history here behind it. I think at most he is a cheater. And I think if he is found out to be a cheater, like if they do dig into it and go, that was straight up manipulation, which clearly it is, then he should be banned from playing Lorcana. He should just be banned from playing in these organized events. You know, let him play casual at game, LGSs, whatever. But he should not be allowed to come in and play these games. I'm sorry, but there needs to be a crackdown when you've got so much cheating, which is the other part of it too, right? There's been so many people from that specific DLC in Melbourne that have said judges were extremely inexperienced. People were cheating left and right. I mean, there is so much there. Where did I put it? There's so much cheating that was actually happening. Oh, I got to read the rule context here too. There was tons of players that were saying that opponents they were playing against were caught cheating, drawing extra cards, making illegal plays. No disqualifications were happening, infractions were happening, which I believe the rule for them currently as it stands is 3 infractions and then you get a DQ. But it's like when you're stacking your hand and you're inking extra cards and you're manipulating your deck to benefit you and knock out your opponent, like that is clear cut cheating. And honestly, out of all of the DLCs, this is the one that got the most heat for it. And people are just screaming out about it. So the first major problem, like I said, is with Clemence. And I mean, he needs to own up to it, honestly. You can't do that. I'm not going to get into his past or anything like that. Like I said, everything is kind of unfounded. There's no real proof of anything. So we're not going to go into that. You know, again, not here to just like massacre the dude or anything like that. But I do think appropriate action needs to be held against him for it. Because, it's very clear that he knew what he was doing. And I do want to, I want to read this real quick. So the rule of context, according to Lorcana's comprehensive rules, sections 8.7.3 and 8.7.4, triggered abilities are added to the resolution queue and can be solved in any order by the active player. 8.7.3 states, whenever a triggered ability happens, it's added to the bag by the player who added it. If multiple triggered abilities happen at the same time, which is this is the case, they're added to the bag simultaneously by the respective player. 8.7.4 states, once there are no more abilities waiting to be added to the bag, the active player chooses and resolves any one of their abilities. An ability must finish resolving before the next can be chosen. If the resolution of an ability triggers another ability, the triggered ability is added to the bag once the current ability is finished resolving. So clearly through the rules, it states that he could add all of those, and he did add all those to the bag, and then he can resolve them in the manner of which he chooses. It does not matter that he triggered his Merlin's ability first and then went to trigger the broom. Does not matter at all. He is allowed to trigger both. They happen simultaneously. He's allowed to do both. So, per the rules, black and white, plain and simple. I mean, that was a wrong ruling. Which brings us to the second main point, and that is the judges had no experience, little to no experience whatsoever in this game, and it was just beyond frustrating to see that unfold the way it did. I'm not going to sit here and just throw shade at the judge whatsoever, all right? Do I think that they should be judging major events anymore? Not until they can pass a test and show that they know what they're doing, which presents the third problem we'll talk about in just a second, which is Lorcana needs a judge program. They need one. It's not even a want anymore. It's not something that they should do. It is a necessity. It is a necessity. It is a need. They must do it. They must do it because this cannot be allowed to happen again. This is... Look, the judges were super inexperienced, and I know Lorcana was not the ones officially running the tournament. It was some third-party people, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They were running it for Lorcana in Lorcana's name. Ravensburger has to own up to that. They have got to own up to it. I know we will never see an apology or a statement or anything like that put out. I know we're not going to, but they need to. They should. They should. But at the end of the day, this is on Ravensburger because this is their game. This is one of their major tournaments that they sanctioned for this to happen. So they need to come out and do something. But the judges not knowing how to rule correctly is a major problem. And again, I'm not going after the judges. That is insanely tough to do just to begin with. But to do it without a proper judge program and real training, like you're sending sheep to the slaughter. You're not preparing people for anything, and you're gonna have a bad time. You are setting yourself up for the exact failure that this was. So the second thing, the judges, they need to be trained. They need to be better. Worlds should not happen until a judge program is put in place. Bottom line, plain and simple, should not happen until there's a judge program in place. And, you know, to say all of this and to go through all of my notes and everything, like, I'm not sitting here, I don't want to badmouth Lorcana and Ravensburger. Like, I get it. It's a new game. They're all trying to learn and do things, but you should know better by now. And if you didn't, you definitely do now. And it would be the best thing to see them take action swiftly in this time to rectify all of these wrongs, right? I know they're not going to get rid of Clement's win and give Jesse that golden Mickey or anything like that. Like, that's done and gone. It's over with. But for the next tournaments, the next DLC, they have to happen before the World Tournament. They have got to fix these. These are major problems. These are major problems. These are problems that will kill a TCG. Like, that is not even, that is factual. That is not up for debate. That is a thing that will kill this game so fast. So it's ironic because my last video I made talking about Lorcana said that, like, this is the year for them. Everything is going in their favor. Like, they have the easiest path to being the top successful TCG of the year. And then they just took, like, an extreme leap backwards instead of just stepping forward. I'm not saying they can't undo some of this. They could make the right choices, make the right moves, clean up a PR disaster, honestly, because that's what this is at this point. On the surface level, they need to clean it up. But there's just so many issues with how these tournaments are happening right now, and they just need to be addressed, you know. And cheating needs to be addressed. Cheating needs to have actual punishment. That needs to have severe consequences for those who are intentionally cheating. I say that because there's some that do make mistakes that aren't intentional, and that's where the infraction rule should come into play. But those who are caught intentionally doing something like Clement should be banned. Flat out. All right. That is my rant. That is my my little statement. I'm done reading my notes. I just want to say that on it. I still love Lorcana. I think this is such a fun game, and I think it still has the best path forward to being the most successful TCG of the year. I would love to see them rectify all of this that's going on, and love to see them just come up with a judge program, right? Something to train and teach people and guide them to do the right thing. Because, again, I'm not going to put this on the judges. They just need training. They need to be taught how to and what to do at the end of the day. And then Ravensburger, just, I feel like it would be in their best interest just to come out and address what's going on and how they're going to fix it. I feel like if they do those things, it could be smooth sailing from here. It could be bridge under the water. We move on to the next one and we live our lives. So that's all I'm going to say. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, what you think about the whole situation, and we'll discuss. But that's all we got. We'll see you in the next video.